Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we got to talk about Gorr the God Butcher, because yesterday we got the trailer for Thor Love and Thunder, and we got the first images of Christian Bale's Gorr the God Butcher, and Thor God of Thunder #2, the comic book that has his first appearance in it, definitely had a lot of movement in the market. Now, did I sell my book too soon? I'm not so sure about that, because although we had a flurry of sales, we're not necessarily setting all new record highs. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the market, see how that book has been moving, talk about maybe some of the glass ceiling that we're seeing with villain books that come from the modern and copper age. And then later on in the video, I'm also going to talk about some of the other interesting things that came out of that trailer and talk about some of the interesting kind of investment books or spec books that relate to those Easter eggs. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel doing those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. And of course, the first thing that we got to talk about, the big news that we got to talk about, is Christian Bale's Gorr the God Butcher. There you see him kind of as the character design in the trailer that we got yesterday. Now, a lot of people have kind of been disappointed with the visuals of Christian Bale. I mean, I think a lot of people are acknowledging that Christian Bale is going to do a great job and he looks, intimidating and all those things, but he definitely doesn't have the exact character design of Gorr the God Butcher that we've come to know in the comic books. But one of the reasons why I bring that up is because I feel like that might have had a little bit of an effect on the values of the Gorr book right here in the market, because I think that there's a lot of people that might be disappointed, or at least a lot of comic book collectors. But if we look at some of the values here and we count the number of books that sold yesterday, we did get a pretty big flurry of sales right away. So let's just count the number of books here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 sales just yesterday for the first appearance of Gorr the God Butcher. This is in comparison to, like, say a day like May 22nd, where you would maybe see like 4 or 5 sales. So we definitely got a massive flurry of sales just from the trailer alone. And it's kind of interesting too, because this trailer was actually announced that it was going to be coming a few days back. So I think that there were a lot of people anticipating that this character was going to be showing up. So there could have been other comic buyers on the 22nd and 21st also pulling the trigger on this book as well. But one of the things I think is interesting about this one is that not only did we get a flurry of sales, but we also got a flurry of new listings as well. I'm not going to count them for you, but if I just scroll down, you guys can see right here, like, just how many new listings for this book came out on the market. And they're not necessarily like being priced at all new record high prices where people are trying to cash in. But I would actually make the argument that, it almost feels like people want to sort of liquidate their book out in the market, or people, who maybe spec'd on this thing for Gorr the God Butcher want to get rid of it. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because I think that ever since we got the announcement that Gorr was coming into the MCU, a lot of people had the idea that this was going to be a book that they would maybe sort of spec on or cash in on when we got to this moment right here with the trailer. Remember, we got the official announcement that Christian Bale was playing Gorr the God Butcher on Disney Investor Day at the end of 2020. So this was actually before, I would say, the 2021 comic market boom. And you can see right there, at the time before the announcement, the average price for this book at the 9.8 grade was $185. Then basically right when we got the announcement, we just flash forward basically a day or so, the average price for this book becomes $410. And you can see here from the graph, even though we've had like some ups, for the most part, I would say since the announcement that Christian Bale was playing this character, this line overall is pretty flat to me. I mean, granted, here the average price was $570, and now the average price is around $462. So there is a little bit of a difference. And I think one of the reasons for this is that, when we think about just the factors of it being sort of supply versus demand, knowing that this book came out in 2012, knowing that there's a certain amount of copies on the census, this was always going to be a book that was going to have a hard time pushing past that $500 threshold, because of the fact that when you look at some of the other comparable villain characters that came out in that same time, their books also have a hard time breaking through that $550 threshold. And I'm going to show you guys a couple examples of that before we move on to some of the other interesting things in the trailer. But before we do all that, let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, MySlabs.com.
The platform designed by collectors for collectors just got even better. MySlabs.com is proud to now feature dedicated sections for both raw cards and raw comic books. Browse over 100,000 slab collectibles, authenticated by the industry's most trusted grading companies. Then check out a massive selection of sealed wax and now raw singles and raw lots. Join a passionate, no-nonsense community of nearly 50,000 members and enjoy some of the best buyer and seller protection in the business. And as always, My Slabs offers one of the most disruptive pricing models in the hobby, with seller fees as low as only 1%. So the next time you're forced to pay 10%, 20%, or more to sell something from your collection, head over to MySlabs.com, the low-fee marketplace, by collectors, for collectors.
All right, so when we think about this book for Gorr the God Butcher and what the potential ceilings are for it, I've picked out 4 other villain characters that I think are, adequate comparables for this character. So the first one here is Venom number 3, which of course is the first appearance of Null, another sort of modern book that I think is a good comparison, effectively Gorr's boss, if you will. We have Uncanny X-Men number 221, a Copper Age book, first appearance of Mr. Sinister, just sort of a S-tier, A-tier villain character. We have X-Factor number 6, first full appearance of Apocalypse, another kind of S-tier Marvel supervillain that came out in the Copper Age. And then we have Amazing Spider-Man number 361, first appearance of Carnage, probably the most celebrated villain character that came out in, say, in the last 30 years or so. And I would say that, ASM 361 would sort of be a benchmark for a character like Gorr the God Butcher. How much bigger could Gorr the God Butcher's book be in comparison to ASM 361? And so when you look at some of the values of this book, we take something like Venom number 3. Right now, the fair market value for this is $325. What that suggests to me is that $325 is an absolute floor for a book like Gorr the God Butcher. I don't ever think it would drop down below that of what is already occurring with Venom number 3. So that's sort of defining what my window would be in that book right there. Then I look at something like Uncanny X-Men number 221. I see the fair market value for this is $450. The 30-day moving is actually around the $565 level. So this is a book where I start to look at some of the values and think to myself, well, Mr. Sinister is definitely a bigger character, in my opinion, than Gorr the God Butcher is. But, if his book can get up to the $530 level, then certainly Gorr's book can get there as well. Although this book has never eclipsed that of the $600 level. So if my expectation is that Gorr's book is going to exceed, say, $650, I would definitely not hold my breath with that prediction right there. Similarly, when I look at X Factor number 6, this book has actually been really starting to heat up recently and is kind of setting new record high prices around the $700 level. But similarly, I think Apocalypse is a bigger character, more grandfathered in. There's less on the census overall. And then lastly, when we think about ASM 361, this is definitely a book that had a massive spike up last year, all the way, up to the $1,200 range. But we know that that didn't last, right, for this book. So to me, it feels like $600, $700 is more of a reasonable floor for this book right here. So if I'm thinking Gorr the God Butcher's book can get up to the $600, $700 range, it's certainly possible. But when we think about the fans of the Carnage character and what this character represents to comic books, I don't know if it's going to be a safe investment to assume that the book is going to be able to maintain a floor value for that price range. So when we look at some of the sales we got yesterday on May 23rd, we actually got a few of them, 4 of them to be exact. And you can see this book is going around the $425, $415. We did get a $500 sale. So I do think that it is fair to assume that the book is going to be, able to sort of hold that $400 level. That was really going to be, the temporary ceiling for this book, because when you think about it compared to other books, I just don't know if there's much room for it to grow, at least in terms of the near future. But of course, who knows where we go from here? Is Christian Bale going to be one and done? Maybe. It doesn't feel like he, as an actor, would want to continually reprise this role, but you never really know. And I think over time, the Gorr the God Butcher book will be something that, people really do love. And if we ever get, more Null storylines or symbiote storylines in the future, you never really know. Maybe that book can continue to increase in value over the long term. All right, some of the other interesting books, of course, we got Thor 378. This is the first appearance of the new look for Thor. We had a couple sales here in the market, just 3 yesterday based off of the trailer. This book right here, Exiles number 2, people are calling this now the first appearance of Valkyrie as Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie. I think that this is an okay book. When you're spending around the $20 price point for this book, I think that that's totally fine. It also features the cameo appearance of Captain Carter. But, to me, I think Defenders number 4 is really the book to own for the Valkyrie character. But we saw, 5 or 6 sales yesterday. Of course, Thor number 1, we saw I think 4 sales yesterday. So, a couple of them moving in the market, some 9.8s moving as well. Here's one that sold for $260. That seems like like a pretty good price. And then lastly, we got this really interesting scene right here where we had Jane Foster kind of electrocuting her hammer, and behind her we sort of saw all these statues of, you know, what we see here is the Living Tribunal. We see what seems to be the Watcher right here. Over here, a lot of people are saying that this is maybe Lady Death. Right here, we have people saying that this could be Eon. And then lastly here, this could be Infinity. And we got a couple sales of this book. One thing I think is interesting is we saw 2 sales for Strange Tales 158 yesterday based off of the trailer, including an 8.0 sale. And I think that that's pretty interesting. It's like now we've started to get like multiple Living Tribunal Easter eggs. Like at first, when we got it in Loki, you know, that could easily be dismissed as just like a little wink to the fans. And then we got it in Doctor Strange, and that can also be, you know, just another little wink as he's traveling through the multiverse. But the fact that we have actually Jane Foster standing in a scene with the statue behind her, I mean, that to me is a really strong indication that there might be something more to what is going on with the Living Tribunal overall. I mean, maybe we're actually going to build to some kind of scene with him in the future. Additionally, a lot of people are talking about Captain Marvel 28. This is the first appearance of Eon. We got a handful of sales here for this book, like I would say 4 or 5 of them. It'll be interesting to keep our eye on this book right here, Captain Marvel number 28. Then there's also Lady Death, which we saw. Now, she makes her first appearance in Journey into Mystery number 1. This is the Jim Starlin book from 1972. Has a kind of a cool first appearance here. We didn't see too many sales of this one. There's also this book here. I've talked about this one a lot, Captain Marvel 26. This is the first cover appearance of Thanos, second full appearance, and first of his relationship with Lady Death. A lot of people have talked about this one being Lady Death's first appearance as well. This is also another great book. And then lastly, I got to pat myself a little bit on the back. You know, I talked about this book before, Quasar number 24. This is the first appearance of Infinity, and it seems like we also saw a statue with her behind Jane Foster Thor. This is a Spec book video I made a long time ago, but I really do think that this is an interesting one to keep our eyes on. Now, again, I would look for that one in a dollar bin. I wouldn't necessarily buy it off of eBay right now. And then lastly, there's this other one that I want to highlight again, Iceman number 3. There's the first full appearance of Oblivion. Oblivion is the, you know, basically the father of Null, the counterpart to Infinity right there, and also has ties to, you know, Gorr the God Butcher because of the fact that it's like the symbiote sword or the necro sword or whatever the case. So all of these cosmic gods I think are really interesting to keep our eyes on. I mean, I don't know if it's just Marvel sort of laying more teases for the fans just to kind of give us a little bit of a wink to this stuff, or if we're actually going to build to, you know, some kind of council later on in the future when we see Secret Wars. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was me just kind of breaking down, you know, some of the books in the market. What did you guys think of the trailer overall? What do you guys think about Gorr the God Butcher? Do you like his new look? What do you guys think about that book? I think that it is still a good book to own, but I don't necessarily think we're going to be seeing all new record highs for it, at least in the short term. Anyways, drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.